Listen up, because what I'm about to tell you is going to blow your mind and possibly change your entire financial future forever. I've been digging deep into something that the banks absolutely do not want you to know about. And the more I uncover, the more convinced I become that we're sitting on the biggest wealth transfer opportunity of our lifetime. You know what's really getting me fired up today? It's this pattern I keep seeing everywhere I look. The banks are playing games with us and they think we're too stupid to notice. But I notice everything. And what I'm seeing is making me more bullish on XRP than I've ever been in my entire life. Let me paint you the real picture of what's happening right now in the financial world, because the mainstream media sure as hell isn't going to tell you the truth. They're too busy protecting their banking overlords who pay their bills. So here's the thing that's been eating at me for weeks now. I was talking to this guy who works at JP Morgan, right? Branch manager level, not some low-level teller. This guy knows things, and he tells me that JP Morgan is planning to allow borrowing and lending using digital assets as collateral. Sounds pretty standard, right? But here's where it gets interesting. When JP Morgan put out their official report about this new digital asset strategy, they mentioned Bitcoin, they mentioned Ethereum, they mentioned other digital assets, but you know what they didn't mention? XRP, not once. Not even a whisper. Now, you might think that's because they don't care about XRP or they don't think it's important. But that's exactly what they want you to think. This isn't ignorance, this isn't an oversight. This is strategic silence, and it tells me everything I need to know about what's really going on behind closed doors. You see, when banks avoid talking about something, it's usually for one of two reasons. Either it's completely worthless and not worth their time, or it's so valuable and so threatening to their existing business model that they need to keep quiet about it while they position themselves. And given everything we know about XRP's technology and its potential to revolutionize cross-border payments, which scenario do you think we're dealing with here? Let me tell you why this silence around XRP is actually the most bullish signal we could possibly get. These banks aren't stupid. They employ some of the smartest financial minds in the world. They have access to information and analysis that we can only dream of. And they're looking at XRP and saying, we can't talk about this publicly yet. Why can't they talk about it? Because they're scared. They're scared of what happens when the retail market figures out what XRP is really capable of. They're scared of what happens when people realize that XRP could potentially replace the entire correspondent banking system that these banks have used to extract billions of dollars in fees for decades. Think about it logically. If XRP was just another cryptocurrency with no real utility, why would they care about mentioning it? They mention Bitcoin all the time. They mention Ethereum all the time. But XRP, radio silence. That silence is deafening, and it's telling me that they know something that they don't want us to know. And here's what really makes my blood boil. While they're staying quiet about XRP publicly, they're working behind the scenes to make sure that when digital assets do go mainstream, they're still the ones collecting all the profits. You know what I'm talking about? This whole thing with the Genius Act and how they're trying to structure it so that banks can custody your digital assets, but keep most of the yield for themselves. Let me break this down for you because this is absolutely criminal. Say you go to your bank tomorrow and you tell them, hey, I want you to hold my digital assets for me and I want to earn yield on them. The bank says, sure, no problem. But then they turn around and give you maybe 1% yield while they're collecting 3, 4, maybe 5% on your assets. They want to be the middleman. They want to insert themselves between you and your financial freedom. They want to make sure that even in this new digital asset economy, they're still the ones calling the shots and collecting the biggest profits. And the crazy thing is, they're probably going to get away with it for a lot of people because most people don't understand what's happening. But here's what they can't control. They can't control the fact that XRP and other digital assets give you the power to cut them out entirely. You don't need their permission to hold XRP. You don't need their custody services. You don't need to give them a cut of your profits. And that terrifies them. Now let's talk about this whole inflation situation and whether it's going to stop retail investors from jumping into crypto. I keep hearing people say, oh, with credit card debt piling up and mortgage problems getting worse, people aren't going to have money to invest in crypto. But I think these people are looking at this completely backwards. You know what I see when I look at the data? I see Google searches for credit card debt reaching 2008 levels. I see mortgage help searches surpassing the 2008 housing crisis. I see people who are desperate, people who are struggling, people who are looking for a way out of their financial problems. And you know what desperate people do? They take risks. They look for opportunities to make quick money. They don't sit around waiting for their savings account to grow at 0.5% while inflation eats away at their purchasing power. They look for something that can change their life overnight. Where do you think those people are going to look? Are they going to put their last $1,000 into a savings bond? Are they going to buy blue chip stocks that might give them 8% a year? Hell no. They're going to look at crypto and they're going to see the potential for life-changing returns. But here's the key. They're not going to put that money into Bitcoin at $60,000 and hope it doubles. They're not going to put it into Ethereum at $4,000 and pray for a 2x. They're going to look for something that's still affordable but has massive upside potential. They're going to look for something like XRP. And this is where the bank's strategy of staying quiet about XRP is going to backfire spectacularly. Because while they've been keeping quiet, we've been accumulating. While they've been playing their little games and trying to control the narrative, we've been building our positions in the one asset that could potentially deliver the kind of returns that could set us free financially. You want to know how I know retail FOMO is coming for XRP? Because of exactly what's happening right now with inflation and economic pressure. When people are struggling financially, they don't become more conservative. They become more aggressive. They start looking for moonshots. They start taking bigger risks because the status quo isn't working for them anymore. And when that retail FOMO wave hits XRP, when millions of people suddenly realize what this technology can do and how undervalued it still is, the price action is going to be absolutely insane. We're talking about the kind of price movements that create generational wealth overnight. But here's what really gets me excited. This isn't just about retail FOMO. That's just one piece of the puzzle. While retail investors are going to be piling in from the bottom, we've got institutional adoption happening from the top, and the institutions aren't going to wait for the banks to give them permission. I've been tracking what's happening in the institutional space, and it's accelerating faster than most people realize. These traditional finance companies are racing to develop digital asset strategies. They're not waiting around for regulatory clarity anymore because they can see which way the wind is blowing. They know that digital assets are going to be a massive part of the financial landscape, whether the old guard likes it or not. And when these institutions start allocating serious capital to XRP, when they start using it for the use cases it was designed for, the supply shock is going to be unlike anything we've ever seen in any market. We're talking about a situation where demand could potentially exceed available supply by orders of magnitude. Think about what happens when you combine institutional demand, retail FOMO, and actual utility all happening at the same time. Think about what happens when XRP starts processing even a small percentage of the international payment volume that currently goes through the traditional banking system. I've been doing some rough calculations, and if XRP captures even 10% of the cross-border payment market currently dominated by SWIFT, we're looking at price levels that most people would consider impossible today. I'm talking about 3-digit prices as a starting point not an endpoint, but that's just the cross-border payment use case. That's just one application of the technology. What happens when you factor in all the other projects being built on the XRP ledger? What happens when you factor in the tokenization trend that's just getting started? What happens when artificial intelligence starts requiring instant, low-cost transactions at scale? All of these trends are converging at the same time, and XRP is positioned perfectly at the center of all of them. While the banks have been playing their games and trying to maintain control, XRP has been building the infrastructure for the future of finance. And here's something that really pisses me off. The same people who have been holding back innovation in the crypto space for years are now trying to position themselves as leaders in digital assets. Gary Gensler spent years attacking everything in crypto except Bitcoin, claiming that everything else was a security. Now that he's gone, suddenly everyone's acting like digital assets are the future. You know what this tells me? It tells me that they always knew digital assets were the future. They were just trying to slow down the innovation long enough for their banking buddies to catch up and position themselves advantageously. They were working for the banks, not for innovation, not for the American people, not for financial freedom. But here's the beautiful thing. Their strategy might have worked for slowing down some projects, but it actually made XRP stronger. All those years of uncertainty, all those legal battles, all that regulatory pressure just made XRP more battle-tested. It forced Ripple to build partnerships all over the world. It forced them to prove their technology in real-world use cases. And now that the regulatory clouds are clearing, now that we have pro-crypto leadership in place, XRP is positioned better than ever. All that pressure and adversity just made the foundation stronger. All those institutions that were waiting on the sidelines are now ready to jump in with both feet. You want to know why I'm so confident about XRP's future? Because I can see all the pieces coming together at the same time. The technology is proven, the use cases are real, the partnerships are in place, the regulatory environment is improving, the institutional demand is building, the retail FOMO is about to kick in, and the banks are still trying to pretend it doesn't exist, but they can't ignore it forever. Eventually, they're going to have to acknowledge what XRP is capable of. Eventually, they're going to have to admit that this technology is going to be a massive part of the financial system, whether they like it or not. And by the time they make that admission publicly, by the time the mainstream media starts covering XRP seriously, the price is going to be so much higher that most people will have missed the biggest part of the move. That's why their silence right now is actually a gift to us. It's giving us more time to accumulate before the rest of the world figures out what we already know. It's giving us more time to build positions before the institutional money really starts pouring in. It's giving us more time to prepare for what could be the biggest wealth transfer in human history. And let me tell you something about timing. We're not just talking about some distant future possibility here. We're talking about trends that are accelerating right now. The adoption of artificial intelligence is happening faster than anyone predicted. The need for instant, low-cost transactions is growing exponentially. The tokenization of real-world assets is just getting started. The breakdown of the traditional financial system is accelerating. All of these trends require exactly the kind of technology that XRP provides. And while everyone's been distracted by the price action in Bitcoin and Ethereum, XRP has been quietly building the infrastructure to serve all of these emerging markets. You know what really drives me crazy? I see people on social media every single day talking about selling their entire XRP bags at some arbitrary price level. They're talking about selling everything at $5 or $10 or $20. And I just want to shake them and ask them, do you understand what you're holding? Do you understand what's coming? This isn't about making a quick profit and getting out. This isn't about doubling your money and calling it a win. This is about positioning yourself for the new financial system that's being built right now. This is about owning a piece of the infrastructure that's going to process trillions of dollars in value over the coming decades. And here's what's really wild. While people are worried about inflation and economic problems pushing retail investors away from crypto, I think it's going to have the exact opposite effect. When people are struggling with credit card debt and mortgage problems, when they're seeing their purchasing power eroded by inflation, when they're worried about losing their jobs to artificial intelligence, they're not going to be satisfied with traditional investments. They're going to be looking for something that can change their situation dramatically. They're going to be looking for assets that can potentially deliver returns that are impossible to achieve anywhere else. And in this environment, XRP represents exactly that kind of opportunity. But you have to understand the time frame we're dealing with. The artificial intelligence revolution isn't happening in some distant future. We're looking at massive job displacement starting in the next few years. Self-driving vehicles are going to eliminate millions of trucking jobs by 2028 to 2030. AI is going to replace doctors, lawyers, teachers, coders, all within the next 5 to 10 years. This isn't science fiction. This is happening right now, and it's accelerating. And when that wave of job displacement hits, when millions of people suddenly find themselves without traditional employment, where do you think they're going to look for financial security? They're going to look for assets that can provide passive income. They're going to look for investments that can grow fast enough to replace their lost wages. XRP is positioned perfectly for this scenario. It's not just a speculative asset. It's not just a store of value. It's a functional piece of technology that can generate returns through actual utility, actual use cases, actual value creation in the real economy. And here's something that most people don't fully appreciate yet. The rise of artificial intelligence is going to create an enormous demand for instant, low-cost transactions. AI systems are going to need to make millions or billions of microtransactions every day. They're going to need to pay for data, processing power, storage, bandwidth, all in real time, all automatically. The current financial system can't handle that kind of transaction volume. Traditional banks can't process billions of micropayments economically, but XRP can. The XRP ledger is built for exactly this kind of high-volume, low-cost transaction processing. And as AI becomes more prevalent, that demand is only going to grow. So while everyone's worried about job displacement and economic disruption, I'm looking at the opportunity. I'm looking at the new economy that's being built on top of blockchain technology and artificial intelligence. And I'm positioning myself to benefit from that transformation instead of being victimized by it. This is why I get so frustrated when I see people talking about selling their XRP bags too early. They're thinking about this like it's just another cryptocurrency trade. They're thinking about taking profits and moving on to the next opportunity. But this isn't just a trade. This is positioning for the future of the global economy. The banks understand this. That's why they're staying quiet about XRP while they position themselves. That's why they're working behind the scenes to make sure they can still extract profits, even in a blockchain-based financial system. They know that whoever controls the infrastructure is going to control the wealth. But here's what they can't control. They can't stop the technology, they can't stop the adoption, they can't stop the utility from driving real demand. And they can't stop people like us from recognizing the opportunity and positioning ourselves accordingly. You want to know what's really going to drive XRP to $1,000 price levels and beyond? It's the combination of all these factors happening simultaneously. Retail FOMO driven by economic desperation, institutional adoption driven by technological necessity, artificial intelligence creating massive transaction demand, tokenization creating new use cases, and supply shock as more and more XRP gets locked up in actual utility instead of just speculation. When you combine all of those factors, when you look at the total addressable market that XRP could potentially serve, $1,000 XRP starts to look conservative. I've been running numbers, and in some scenarios, we could be looking at price levels that seem absolutely impossible today, but will seem inevitable once the adoption really kicks in. But timing is everything. Right now, while the banks are staying quiet, while the mainstream media is ignoring XRP, while retail investors are distracted by Bitcoin and Ethereum, we have an opportunity to accumulate at prices that are going to look absolutely ridiculous in retrospect. This is our moment. This is our opportunity to position ourselves before the rest of the world figures out what we already know. This is our chance to build wealth while everyone else is worried about problems that crypto can actually solve. Don't let the economic fear-mongering distract you from the opportunity. Don't let the bank's strategic silence make you think XRP isn't important. Don't let the short-term price volatility make you lose sight of the long-term potential. We're living through the biggest financial transformation in human history. The old system is breaking down. The new system is being built on blockchain technology. And XRP is positioned to be a cornerstone of that new system. The banks know it. The institutions know it. The smart money knows it. The only question is whether you're going to position yourself to benefit from it, or whether you're going to let fear and uncertainty keep you on the sidelines while the biggest wealth transfer in history happens without you. I know which side I'm on. I know what I'm holding. And I know that years from now, when XRP is trading at prices that seem impossible today, when blockchain technology is processing the majority of global financial transactions, when artificial intelligence is creating demand for trillions of microtransactions every day, we're going to look back on this moment as the opportunity of a lifetime. The banks want your yield. They want to be the middlemen. They want to control the new system just like they controlled the old one. But we don't have to give them that power. We can cut them out entirely by holding our own XRP, earning our own yields, and building our own financial freedom. The silence around XRP isn't a negative signal. It's the most bullish indicator we could possibly get. It tells us that we're onto something big, something that threatens the existing power structure, something that could change everything. And inflation isn't going to stop retail FOMO, it's going to accelerate it. When people are desperate, when they're struggling, when they're looking for a way out, they don't play it safe, they take big swings. And XRP represents the biggest swing available in the crypto space. This is it. This is our time. This is our opportunity. Don't let it pass you by.